From the high desert in the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whatever the case may be, wherever in the world's time zones you reside. Each and every one covered like a blanket by this program, Coast to Coast AM. I'm Art Bell, filling in for a vacationing and well-deserved George Norrie. Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'll be here tonight, actually, and tomorrow night as well. Tonight, we'll enjoy the company of my very good friend, Whitley Strieber, in the next hour. This hour will be open lines, unscreened open lines. And then tomorrow night, you're really not going to want to miss the program we're going to be doing on bird flu. Now, I will warn you, it's going to scare the you-know-what out of you, so be warned ahead of time. Really is going to be a scary show. And what a show it is. Politics underway in America, officially, once again, Iowa. I watched it all live. Obama. My goodness, Senator Barack Obama swept to victory in the Iowa caucuses Thursday night, pushing Hillary Rodham Clinton to third. I thought it was going to be tie for second, but no, third place, taking a major stride in a historic bid to become the nation's first black president. Mike Huckabee, another surprise, rode a wave of support from a lot of Christians to win the opening round among Republicans in the 2008 campaign for the White House. Obama, 46, a first-term senator from Illinois, told a rather noisy victory rally. His triumph showed that, quote, in big cities and small towns, you came together to say, quote, we're one nation, we're one people, our time for change has come, end quote. Wouldn't that be something? Well, it didn't turn out the way a lot of people thought it would, did it? Of course, it's far from over. New Hampshire could be a very different story. But on the Democrat side, what a surprise. Well, actually, on both sides. And one comment made on TV that I really did enjoy, especially with respect to the Republican side of things, was you can't buy elections. It proves you can't buy elections. Indeed, Huckabee spent very, very little money compared to his rivals, and yet he won. I guess that still means something in America, eh? Senator Clinton, unbowed by third-place finish in the caucuses, hailed it nevertheless as a great night for Democrats, said that the strong turnout pointed to the sure election of a Democrat president in November. And I had been kind of thinking, well, it's going to be a Clinton-Obama ticket. Maybe it'll be a Obama-Clinton ticket. Delaware Senator Joe Biden abandoned his bid for Democratic presidential nomination Thursday after a very poor showing in the state's caucuses. Biden was expected to announce his decision to withdraw from the contest at his campaign caucus rally in Des Moines. That was from a spokesperson who did not wish to be identified. Republican presidential hopeful Rudy Giuliani praised rival Mike Huckabee for his win in the Iowa caucuses, a contest Giuliani virtually skipped, didn't spend much money, yet insisted his own early state campaign could win over the long haul. I think we're in good shape, he said, maybe in 18 of the 29 states that are coming up. So he's in it for the long haul. 3 times. Now, this is something I've really wanted to talk to this audience about for a long time. 3 times during his nearly 27 years in prison, Charles Chapman went before a parole board and refused to admit that he was a rapist. His steadfastness was vindicated Thursday when a judge released him because of, guess what, new DNA evidence showing he didn't do it. The release of Chapman 47 added to Dallas County's nationally unmatched number of wrongfully convicted inmates. Every time I'd go to parole, They'd want a description of the crime, my version of the crime, whatever. Chapman said, I don't have a version of the crime. I never did it. I will never admit to doing this crime or any crime that I know I didn't do. And I'm afraid I used to be a very strong advocate of the death penalty, for people who murder. But I think I've changed my mind. There are too many people who have been in line for the big needle or whatever would do them in. And DNA evidence has suddenly come forward, and they're suddenly out on the street again, innocent. So how many people have we wrongfully convicted and then executed? Apparently, a fair number. Even one would be too many. All right, in a moment, we'll explore a little bit of the rest of the news. As you know, a lot of theoretical physicists believe that dark matter might be pushing everything around. Well, maybe not. Time is running out. Literally, according to one scientist, or actually several, scientists have come up. This is really worth listening to. They've come up with a radical suggestion that the universes, plural actually, end may come not with bang, but a standstill. The time could literally be running out and could one day stop altogether. The idea that time itself could cease to be, in billions of years perhaps, and that everything will simply grind to a halt, has been set out by Professor Jose Sinovila, Mark Mars, and Raul Vera of the University of the Basque Country, University in Spain. The motivation for this radical end to time itself is to provide an alternative explanation for dark energy, the mysterious, and I should have said energy, not matter, the mysterious anti-gravitational force that has been suggested to explain a cosmic phenomena that has baffled scientists. A decade ago, astronomers noticed that very distant supernova, exploding stars on the very fringe of the universe, seemed to be moving faster than those nearer to the center, suggesting that they were accelerating as they shot through space. Dark energy was suggested as one possible means of powering the acceleration of the expansion of the cosmos. The problem is no one has any idea what dark energy is or where it comes from, and those who theorize about such things around the world have been scrambling to find out what it is or get rid of it. The team's proposal, which is going to be published in the journal Physical Review, does away altogether with dark energy. Instead, according to the professor, the appearance of acceleration is caused by time itself gradually slowing down, kind of like a clock that needs winding. Quoting, "We do not say the expansion of the universe itself is an illusion," he said. "What we say is, it may be an illusion. What may be an illusion is the acceleration of the expansion. That is, the possibility that the expansion is and has been increasing its rate. Instead, if time gradually slows, but we naively kept using our equations to derive the changes of the expansion with respect to a standard flow of time, then the simple models that we have constructed in our paper show that an effective accelerated rate of the expansion takes place. While the change would infinitesimally slow from an ordinary human perspective, from the grand perspective of cosmology, one in which scientists study ancient light from the suns that shone billions of years ago, the temporal slowing could be easily measured. Astronomers are able to discern the expansion speed of the universe using so-called red shift. Right, folks? Red shift. The principle is the same as that of an ambulance siren. As it gets higher, it does, right, as it comes toward you, but then lower as it moves away. Well, in a similar way, a star moving away appears redder in color than one moving toward us. Scientists look for exploding stars, supernova, of certain types that provide, if you will, a benchmark to work against. However, the accuracy of these measurements depend on time remaining invariable throughout the entire universe. If time is indeed slowing down, So that according to this new suggestion, our solitary time dimension is slowly turning into a new space dimension. Then the far distant ancient stars seen by cosmologists would therefore, at least from our perspective, look as though they were accelerating. Our calculations show we would think that the expansion of the universe is accelerating. The group bases its idea on one particular variant of superstring theory, a variant, mind you, a so-called theory of everything in which our universe is confined to the surface of a membrane or brain floating in a higher dimensional space known as the bulk. That's B-U-L-K. In other words, in some number of billions of years, time would simply cease to be time altogether, and everything is going to stop. Then everything will be frozen, kind of like a snapshot of one instant, but forever. As a quote from the professor to New Scientist magazine, our planet, he says, is going to be long gone by then. Imagine that. So instead of dark energy, we have time itself slowing down and then eventually stopping altogether. I wonder what the effects, if it's one of these things where it slows down bit by bit by bit. Yes, very dramatic, of course, when it stops altogether, but if it just slows, there are going to be interim effects that should be very, very interesting, wouldn't you think? Would it then seem as though events are getting faster? Could that be one side effect? If time slows, could events seem to be quicker? You know, like, for example, a quickening. All right, look. Open lines, we don't have a whole lot of time for them, but the remainder of this hour devoted to open lines, that means all of you. So here it comes. West of the Rockies, 1-800-618-8255. East of the Rockies, lots of you out east, 800-825-5033. First-time callers, we love you. Area code 818-501-4721. Unscreened open line, so let it ring until I answer, and when I do answer, turn your radio all the way off right away. Wildcard line. We have many of those, so your chances of, getting through it pretty good. Area code 818-501-4109. Finally, internationally, no matter where you are in the world, get hold of your AT&T operator. Tell her you want to call 800-893-0903. That's 800-893-0903. By the way, yet another picture taken yesterday of Asia. Proud daddy. She really is a beauty. Anyway, that one snapped yesterday. You want to see it? Go to coasttocoastam.com. I better check and make sure it's there. Before I say that, normally when you come to the front page of the website, right at the very top, in the middle, you will see something that says Art's webcam or something like that. Let me see. Yes, Art's webcam is it, and there she is. What a little beauty. Absolutely an incredible little girl. Just an amazing little girl. Really amazing. If you'd like to email me, just before we go to the phones here, you can do so. I'm Art Bell, ARTBELL, at mindspring.com, MINDSPRING, mindspring.com, or artbell at AOL.com. The Mindspring address is a bigger mailbox, so you've got a better chance of it getting through there. Here we go. West of the Rockies, you are on the air.
Yes, Art. I have 4 different things to mention about an inventions, all right?
Okay, I guess.
Okay. One, you ever heard of the Zebcat Auto?
No.
It is filled by 10 minutes of electricity. The tank fills up by air compressor. 2,100 miles on a tank of compressor.
Wait.
And the exhaust.
Wait. It runs on compressed air, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and it goes how many miles?
Like 231 miles.
231 miles on one tank, which you can put in there in 10 minutes.
Yeah, they claim, yes. I can give you a website for it, Art.
No, not on there.
It went not on there. But here's another one. There's a thing called the Lotus Zap Auto. They claim that's 10 minutes. Each mile cost about a penny of electricity, 3,500 miles, top speed 155 miles an hour, 0 to 64 in 4 seconds, will carry 5 people and luggage.
And it runs on compressed air as well?
No. It is electricity. It is a new technological breakthrough on electric car.
Man, that's incredible. I mean, the numbers you're giving me are...
I know, it is incredible. I can give you
the very fastest, biggest engines that run on the biggest high-test gasoline would be, to achieve those numbers in 4 seconds.
And then I was in the library reading an article. It was Popular Mechanics or Popular Science. You know the talk show, the TV guy named Jay Leno that collects cars?
I've heard of him, yes. Jay Leno, yes.
Claiming he's driving 10 days at that time. He's probably still driving it. A car that gets 75.8 or 10 miles on a gallon of hydrogen.
Well, that may well be. All right. Well, listen, thank you very, very much. Yes.
I heard speak at the SF Tesla when I used to live in San Francisco, but now I'm in Vegas. But he mentioned there was a motorboat also somebody's made to run on compressed air.
Oh, I would imagine if you could run a car, you could run a motorboat and a lot of other things. An engine is an engine, right? I think the compressed air concept is a good one, and if the numbers that he was quoting are real, that's truly incredible. I mean, really incredible. As I mentioned to him, some of the biggest, best engines we've got with the highest test gas don't do anything like that in terms of performance. Forget about the mileage and the cheap cost to put the air in and all the rest of it. So maybe that's a miracle on the horizon. Who knows? East of the Rockies, you're on the air. Hi.
Mr. Bell.
Yes.
This is Larry. I'm in Naples, Florida.
Hello, Larry.
How are you? Congratulations on your newborn. I haven't talked to you before.
7 months old now.
Great. Looking forward to talking to you. You mentioned last night something of your interest in chemical trails.
I wasn't on last night.
Well, that was the previous night. I caught the replay.
Okay.
And the chemical trails that we've been following down here in southwest Florida for the past 3 months have taken kind of a turn for different sort of chemical spills. We've been following these things, taking pictures of them, and it's hard to explain.
Have you done any research in terms of the chemical makeup of the chemtrails?
Well, a friend of mine who's been in the military talked to someone else who's been in the military in the Air Force, and he says that part of the chemical spills is beryllium, a heavy metal.
Yeah, there was an article in an Idaho paper, sir, that was the most definitive list of things, and they found all kinds of awful things, viruses and human blood, and oh God, it went on and on. I think it was the Idaho. I'm sorry, I can't recall exactly now.
It was an Idaho newspaper, I remember.
Right.
But the list, I couldn't tell you what it all
right.
entails.
Well, that's what we need. We need hard evidence like that. We need more analysis of what's in these things.
Exactly. Now, what they've been doing here, where I work here in Naples, Florida, we've been watching the skies. And the coloration of the skies, the clouds, that's different. The clouds are taking on a greenish, reddish hue to them in the sunlight when the sun is not directly in your eyes, but if you look at a eave of a building and you get the glow of the sun and the clouds are just right, you can see this greenish, reddish hue to it, or a pinkish hue. And it's very different. We've had beautiful sunsets, but they're reddish clouds with these sunsets.
All right.
Real
well,
red.
if you have the opportunity, try and gather some of this material some way or another by hook or crook and get it analyzed. We need hard data. Good morning. I'm Art Bell. Well, John in Bronx, New York. Thank you, buddy. He reminds me, as the audience does so frequently, that it was regarding the chemtrails in the Idaho newspaper. How about July 2006, the Idaho Observer? And what they did was report on the analysis of some stuff that fell from the sky from some chemtrails, and it was really, really disgusting. I've read it on the air several times, but those into the chemtrails thing, you might want to take a look-see at that. Idaho Observer, it would be July 2006. If you're doing a search, look for contrails or chemtrails or something like that, and I'm sure you'll find it. In a moment, we'll get right back to you. Tomorrow night, Dr. Gary Ridenour, and he sent me a book. Here's how all this happened. He just sent me a copy of his book called Pandemic. And I sat down and read it right away. This is a medical doctor who can clearly see what's coming with bird flu. And he'll speak about it tomorrow night here on the air. And I'm telling you right now, it's going to scare the hell out of you. So it is a truly scary show from somebody who knows what's coming. So if you have the cojones to listen to what may be about to occur, tune in tomorrow night, but be careful. It's going to be rough. All right. Wildcard line, you are on the air. Hi.
About time that you put me on the air, Mr. Bell. I dialed one time and God got me through. You know why, Mr. Bell?
I have no idea, JC.
I'm coming to Las Vegas to protest that porno show that's going on there next week. I'm coming and I'm bringing the...
And I'm surprised you would even set foot inside the city limits of Las Vegas.
I'm bringing an army with me, and I'm going to rally the troops, and we're gonna go down there, and we're gonna bullhorn that thing, and I dare you to come down and face me man to man.
Face you?
That's right.
I do that every time you somehow manage to get through, JC.
Well, I think we had spoken about a fist fight one time or another, and you said your back was hurting and hemming and hawing. And now, how you feeling now, Mr. Bell? You ready?
As a matter of fact, JC, I wouldn't let my back hold me.
Well, listen, but it's beside the point. What?
Anytime, JC. Anytime. Bring it on.
That's right, for the Lord.
Hey, let's get a little update. What's the latest on Edna? You said she was going to come crawl. Wait a minute. You said she was going to come crawling back to you, JC.
Very soon she will come crawling back to me on her hands and knees and ringing and writhing and begging for forgiveness from me. And
sometime before time freezes, I imagine, huh?
Well, listen, I'm telling you, people out there need to know that hell is not... She'll be back before hell freezes over. I'll tell you that right now. And I know who the Antichrist is, but I'm not going to tell you that tonight. But I'm telling you what, Mr. Bell, that I listened to your prediction show, and I heard all that mumbo-jumbo and psychic divining, and it was... I
bet you tried to get through, too, didn't you?
I certainly did, because I have some of my own predictions.
You know what? I won't write it down, but I am curious, JC. If you had one prediction to make for 2008, I guess we'd all like to know, what would that be?
God is going to put AIDS airborne to punish America. That's what he's going to do. AIDS is going to go airborne. It's going to be a plague, and the bodies are going to pile up like cordwood in the streets, and I'll be...
Yeah, but all right, JC, let's assume something like that occurred, and when AIDS went airborne, it wouldn't just punish America, it would punish the whole world.
Well, they deserve it anyway, but it's going to be a righteous punishment, and I can't wait. I can't wait for the end times when the vials are broken and poured upon the wrath of God is poured upon the face of the earth. It's going to be glorious, Mr. Bell, and I'm telling you right now, we're getting really close because just trust me on it.
Who do you support in the presidential race?
I support me. Haven't you heard that I put my candidacy, I throw my hat, my 10-gallon, 10-star hat in? I am going to be the next president of the United States. 2008 is the year of the clampdown. JC for president. Everybody, when you go to the polls, be sure and let God work your hand to write in JC for president. I'm going to get
all right, JC, that's it. That's all I can handle. A write-in campaign for JC. I get lots of emails saying the guy's a put-on. And he may be... Well, you know what? He's not a put-on. Actually, he's not a put-on. He sends me email that is just like what you hear on the air. You know, except you can kind of sort of turn down the volume in your brain as you read. So he really believes all this stuff. He actually does. And in terms of the other thing they say, of course, is he's a plant, and he's not a plant. Never has been a plant. I've never had one plant on this show ever. And I wouldn't. It's not needed. The world is strange enough as it is. Believe me. First time caller line, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello, Art. Thank you very much for putting me on. First time caller from Alberta, Canada.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I love my country, and I do love the United States of America, too, but I do not think our two countries should ever be combined as one in that union with Mexico or anything like this. It's just the horriblest thing that I've ever heard.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, what would be your answer then? I'm not saying that I'm absolutely for it, but here's what I would say. Europe now, of course, has combined into a trading bloc, right?
Well, we could do the same thing.
No, let me finish. Am I right? Europe has combined into a trading bloc, yes?
Yes.
Okay, and Asia is well on its way into combining into a trading bloc. And that's pretty powerful stuff. So how do we compete with them?
Well, we don't have to give up our sovereignty. We can be together, but, you know, the way it's going, what I've been hearing and all the stuff and the thing, our money, you know, our government, everything, that can't happen. We have to have our own integrity, you know. Nobody in Canada wants to be controlling the States, or nobody in the States wants to control Canada. You know, there's got to be a balance in there somewhere, Art.
Well, yeah, but you're not describing it to me. In other words, you're saying that each country in North and South America should retain its sovereignty and not join as Europe and Asia are doing.
Well, we could, in a sense, that there's certain products from North America, South America, that we control. You know, the wheat, oil, stuff like this is a product itself that's sold all over the world, and both Canada and the United States control the world, and wheat and, you know, production of cars, airplanes, stuff like this. You know, that is a given. But to give away our sovereignty, each country.
I know. It's a very hard to swallow concept. I completely agree with you, and to even toy around with the sovereignty of the United States is not a pleasing thought at all. I'm not sure how we're going to compete in a world that has decided to align in the manner that it's obviously doing. Europe's pretty well wrapped up already, and Asia's right on the cusp of doing it. How are we going to compete? We have to look to the future and decide how this is going to happen. Now, we're not ready to do it yet, obviously, but I think someday the Americas are going to have to join in some sort of economic fashion to be competitive in the world. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying right now what I think, because I'm not sure myself. It's just not a fun idea to consider what we've known all our life, our sovereignty, in any way watered down. Is just not a good thought. East of the Rocky, whoops, you would have been. Let's get rid of that and push that button. I'm learning some new buttons here. And go to the international line. You're on the air. Hello.
Hey, Art, how's it going?
Very well, sir.
You're an environmentalist, what did you say?
I would say yes.
Yeah, do you have solar panels on your roof and stuff like that?
Yes, I do.
Do you have, like, hybrid vehicles at all, or?
No.
No, you're not?
No, I have a little four-banger car.
You ever be, well, I've been listening to you for a long time. You have, like, a Trans Am, and you have that little Metro going, right?
I do. I still have my Trans Am, still have the Camaro. They get used. Well, I'll tell you what. My Trans Am was purchased in 1998. It's got 11,000 miles on it.
Would you ever be considering buying a hybrid, or?
Sure.
And I got one prediction for you, Art.
Okay.
You will no longer accept JC's calls.
Oh, no.
No.
In open lines, I mean, you can make the prediction, but I will continue to, if he can get through, he can go on the air.
Okay. Great talking to you, Art. Take care. Bye.
Take care. Yes, I've got, we're solar powered here. And I've got a bank of batteries, and I've got inverters and all of that. So actually, if the power goes off in this neighborhood, the only place that it doesn't is here. And I put those in a number of years ago when it was not nearly so cost efficient or close to cost efficient as it is now. So yes, I'm a big believer. And I spent a lot of money I probably should not have, but I just wanted to do it. I wanted wind and solar power to power this house, and that is the way it works. West of the Rockies, you're on the air.
Hey, Art.
Hey.
This is Jeff in Albion, California, AMDXing on KFI 640, about 640 miles northwest of Los Angeles.
Yeah, well, that's one hell of a signal on 640.
Yeah, it's coming in pretty good up here, and about 125 miles north of San Francisco. Mm-hmm. I wanted to tell you, your voice sounds about 10 years younger after you've quit smoking here, and I thought maybe they were doing a rerun on the first night of the prediction shows when I first tuned you in, and I wanted to commend you on that, and I hope you keep going and with that and can hang with it. You sound really good.
Well, thank you. It's a month. It's killing me.
Well, the other thing I wanted to mention on that topic is, you know how much you mentioned that you missed doing the show?
Oh, yes.
Well, we out here miss you that much individually, and hey, man, we outnumber you.
Yes, you do.
So I'd really like to see you come back to at least some more weekends, man, because I missed those nightly visits all those years ago. I started listening in 95, and wow, some great shows. I'll tell you, over the years, you've been the gatekeeper and the keymaster of a lot of information, man, and on Halloween, you're the skeleton keymaster.
All right, well, all I'll say is I'll never say never again. So that, cool. It doesn't mean much, but I mean, there you are.
You've made some comebacks a few times. I did want to also mention, referring to quite a few times actually, the prediction show. You asked quite a few people how they came to their prediction.
That's right.
And I've had a few situations in life, and you've mentioned one when you were in Santa Barbara, of course, that you just feel like waves. And the way I describe it, Art, is it's kind of like a fast blast from the universe. I don't put it there. It just comes on the screen, and it's a vision. And the most recent one that I had and I know you can't write this down, but when Evelyn Paglini was on, I was talking about the Southern California fires. Mm-hmm. I remember her saying that she felt there was going to be another problem in Southern California, but she didn't quite see what it was.
That's right.
And instantly, the fast blast that came into me was floods. And the one that I see specifically is between March and April. The Los Angeles River will make L.A. look like the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay.
We're all awaiting a series of storms that are closing in on us right now.
Well, actually, a river right near me may flood out tonight, the Navarro River, which is right near Albion. You might hear about it on the news. They're talking about it closing the highways and flooding over the banks and onto the highway and over the bridge, actually. So, yeah, and it's all along the West Coast and all over here. So, and as a former storm chaser, what can you tell us about this? I'm already getting zaps on my AM that I hear the lightning coming.
Right. No, these are going to be powerful precipitation makers, and that's all I can tell you right now, but it looks like we're going to have about 5 straight days of rain. And listen, while we're on the subject, nobody, and I mean nobody, no remote viewer, no psychic, nobody has come close to Evelyn Paglini in terms of predictive accuracy.
She's just incredible. I hope you have her on again sometime on one of those weekends when you're going to come back, right?
Well, you have a good night, sir.
Thank you for making it a good night, and keep it up. I hope to hear you again soon.
Take care. Okay, to the wild card line. You're on the air. Hi.
Hi, Art. My name is Helen.
Hi, Helen.
Hi. I'm from Ohio. The station I listen to is WTAM.
Oh, yes, of course.
And the first thing I want to say is I love your show. I love you. And I want to say congratulations on your new family.
Thanks.
And a very, very blessed and healthy new year to you and yours and all of the listeners. I've been listening to Coast for around 12 years. And I have a question that's kind of dumb, but I've always been curious. Why do you need to know the location when people call? It's just curiosity.
You don't. I don't need to know. It's, as you just mentioned, it's just curiosity. I'm just curious where people are.
Oh, I just wondered.
Yeah, absolute curiosity, and that's all there is to it. I think it stems, for me, anyway, from ham radio. You know, it's for me, it's the magic of radio. Radio that sends a signal to the ionosphere, bounces back to Earth, then back to the ionosphere, and back to Earth again. A little while ago was listening to 640 from Los Angeles, right? KFI, the monster in Los Angeles. And I don't know, it's just absolute curiosity. Whenever I'm talking to somebody who's listening to me on the radio, be it ham radio or a commercial, I get a thrill of knowing where they are. Thousands of miles, sometimes as much as 9 or 10,000 miles away. So, I don't know, there's some kind of thrill in it for me. West of the Rockies, you're on the air.
Hi, my name's Marcella, and I just had a question.
Sure.
Regarding, I had a dream. Actually, it was a few times I had a dream, and it was actually about a field, and it was like it was a grassy field.
Field of dreams?
Yeah, it was like a field. Yeah, it was a dream that I had, and it was actually I'm living in this house that I've lived in since I was 12 years old. I'm actually about 38 right now, and I was sleeping, and I walked through the hallway, and I looked back, and I saw my husband and my kids sleeping, and I walked down the stairs, and the scene changed into this field, and I've had this dream actually more than 3 times already, and I've seen when I walked through the hallway, the field, I saw all the people that I've seen through my life, and I actually lost my sister and my grandmother, and I've seen these people in this field.
And the people you've lost are all there?
Yes, my sister, my grandmother, my grandfather, my ex-boyfriend, and they've all died within the past 10 years.
Wow.
And so they came to me, and I was talking to them, and behind them is this huge tree, and it's like a wheat field.
Right.
And so, I asked them, I said, is it time for me to go? And I've lost my sisters when I was 20, when they were 21, and I'm the youngest of the family, 21, and I'm 32, and I'm 38 right now. And I've lost my grandmother a year after each one died. And they said, it's not your time yet. Now, the question I have is, the same field, I would have it would be a similar dream. I had another dream similar to this dream, but it was, I was in a house, and I would look out, and it's this huge field again. It's a wheat field with this huge tree behind it. And it was this lady, and she told me to come into this room. I was in a house. And
we have very little time.
Yeah, and actually, the question is this lady actually, I don't know what these dreams mean. That's my question is...
Well, I'm certainly not going to be the one to be able to tell you what it means. However, if somebody who has already passed, or a group even more so, that have already passed, are able to have a dialogue with you, telling you it's not yet your time, then perhaps you are in a position to tell me what it all means. That's right. From the middle of the desert, where the rains are about to start coming down, and they tell us it'll be about 5 days, and of course, whatever we get, California gets first, and probably more of it. All right, coming up in a moment, my very good friend, Whitley Strieber. He is the author of many, many best-selling novels and works of nonfiction. 4 movies have been made from his books. Most recently, the 2004 mega hit The Day After Tomorrow, based on his novel, Superstorm. Actually, could have reworded that. Our novel, Superstorm, written with me. Among his best-known novels are The Wolfen and The Hunger, both of which were made into films. He's also written other bestsellers, including Billy, Cat Magic, Majestic, War Day, my personal favorite, Nature's End, Communion, and Transformation. My goodness. His latest book, The Greys, a thriller about what happens when aliens land, being made into a film by Sony Pictures. In 1999, he co-produced with Mark Wolper a special for NBC based on his book Confirmation. At present, he and Mark are producing a remake of Wolfen for A&E. You might look for that. He also has an internet radio program, Dreamland. And, of course, his website, unknowncountry.com, is the single most popular edge science website in the world. In a moment, Whitley Strieber. Well, all right, just before I bring Whitley on, as you know, I've not been on the air a whole lot. Had I been, I would have been up on the whole drone business. You know, the photographs of the drones that we've seen that so many maintained were real. Reading from Whitley Strieber's unknowncountry.com website, I find that this headline, Possible First Authentic Drone Video. Last July, a series of remarkable photographic images appeared of unknown airborne objects that came to be nicknamed drones because of their complex structure and seeming lack of crew space. The photographic images of the drones were claimed by various individuals, but the people claiming to have created them uniformly ignored the extensive eyewitness testimony from named witnesses that was assembled by Linda Moulton Howe. Videos of these strange devices also appeared on YouTube and other video sites. Investigation or open admission by the creators revealed they were all computer-generated graphics. Now, however, there's a video from Brazil that this story says may show one of the devices in flight over the city of Sao Paulo. Due to the low resolution of the video and the distance of the object from the camera, this cannot be determined without doubt, but at this time, investigators believe the video is authentic. So, Whitley, I've been out of touch on the drone thing, but I am shocked that all previous still photographs are now known to be, I guess, Photoshop creations or whatever?
No, on the contrary, most of the still photographs are probably real.
Oh.
There might be some Photoshop stuff in there, but we quite a number of the stills are from people who Linda has interviewed and who I have checked out, and they are entirely real, normal individuals. And what's so interesting about this is that there have been many claims made, even one website, a German website, which has elaborate claims about having been the originator of the drone photographs, a man who would not actually interview with Linda after talking to her on the phone in English quite comfortably. When she asked for an interview, he said, well, his English wasn't good enough to do an interview.
Okay, all right, but explain this sentence to me. Investigation or open admission by the creators revealed that they were all computer-generated graphics
of the CG, of the animations on YouTube. That was not the stills. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, the animations. Right. We couldn't find any animations on YouTube that were real. I mean, most UFO. my guess is that more than 90% of the UFO footage on YouTube is fake.
Probably, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And but it's fairly easy to determine that it's a computer graphic. It's not so easy with YouTube to determine that a still is faked, because the amount of information that's available on it's very low res. But I have a CGI artist who looked at most of those graphics, all of those graphics for me. He couldn't find any of them that were real imagery except the Sao Paulo one, which is an image of something in the sky.
Okay, but not clear enough to positively say it's a drone?
Well, it's something similar to what was photographed over Northern California and a few years ago over Alabama. Yeah, it is definitely similar, but we can't say it's exactly the same thing because it's not clear enough.
All right. We've been dealing with UFO reports in the modern era for 60 years now, abduction reports for 30.
Yes.
And yet, when UFOs are brought up in the press, they all laugh. It's always the last story. It's always cause for much laughter and derisive comment.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's pitiful. It makes me sad because of the waste of knowledge that is involved in this. Because there are two things that we can prove. UFOs are real, and interaction between human beings and whatever is out there happens, and happens a lot.
As in abductions, right?
Abductions and close encounters and all kinds of. It's an incredibly complex human phenomenon taking place, as well as an incredibly complex thing taking place in the sky. And what is so amazing is that the press has got this ritualized laughter going on that is demented. It's actually not sane. It's completely not. It's not sane at all. And I think the government's continual denial has to do with a very simple fact. They know perfectly well something is happening to people.
You know, Whitley, if the press didn't treat it, as something humorous and generally it's the last kicker story, if they actually reported on this in a serious fashion, maybe it would panic people. Maybe it would scare people. Maybe it would do a lot of things that they're afraid of.
Well, I'll tell you what would panic people is if NASA or the president or somebody were to go into a press conference and say, yeah, we do think UFOs are real, and then the next question is going to be, well, what about the abduction?
Right.
And then the answer has to be, well, we don't know what that is, and we can't do anything about it. And that will upset people, obviously.
Oh, yes.
I was at the storage space where we keep the old communion letters a few days ago, because there is a man wealthy man interested in possibly digitizing the letters for use by scientists. And I was looking at these boxes and boxes of these letters, some of them 20 and more years old, also carefully cataloged, that are sitting there ready and waiting. This is a communication, mankind's first interaction, communication with another world, and it sits in a warehouse gathering dust. There are thousands and thousands of those letters, each one of them filled with detailed information about what happened to this person, how they perceived it in their lives. And it's absolutely amazing that in all this time, and despite my efforts, no scientist has been willing to touch this. No foundation has been willing to grant money for it. All I have ever gotten is the National Academy of Sciences frowns on UFO research, or the CIA frowns on UFO.
These are letters you received after the publication of Communion?
After publication of Communion, yes. Yeah. When we were still in paper letters. We still get them every day on email. We have those saved, too.
Sure. I have heard through the grapevine that you have had after a very long period of a drought, if you will, that you've had another contact. Is it true?
Oh, yeah. It's if listeners go to my journal on my website, what you do is you go to unknowncountry.com and you look on the left-hand column, and down the middle of that column you will see Whitley's Journal, and click on it. And you will see a journal called A Most Complex Encounter, and it happened on December the 7th.
All right. Well, for those who aren't going to be able to do that, this is radio. Just tell me what happened.
Okay, I'll try, Art.
Sure.
We're going to start talking about parallel universes and all kinds of things like that.
That's fine.
Now, I'll first tell you about the way it ended.
Really?
Yes. And there'll be a reason. And then what led up to it is the encounter part of it. But the way it ended was this. After an extraordinary night of unusual experiences, I woke up lying in bed with my head lying on my side, and in my bed, lying on that particular side, on my left side, I would be looking across my wife, past her clock, and up out some windows, the blinds of which were partly opened. Mm-hmm. The clock said 4:53. Perfectly clear. It's very clear. You can see it easily. It's a lit clock. And out the windows, and it was a stormy night. The wind was racing and the clouds were racing. And coming through those clouds with absolutely no regard whatsoever for the wind and the weather was an enormous object, and it could not have been high at all. I would guess it was under 500 feet and coming gracefully toward the building. And it was just in the ceiling, just at the cloud ceiling. I mean, just at the point where just the bottom part of it was visible below the clouds, and it was often not visible. And I immediately woke Ann up and jumped out of bed, and I said, "There's a drone out there." Because that's exactly what it looked like. It looked like one of the pictures of the drones that Linda gathered from people over the course of the summer. Right. And I was shocked, absolutely stunned. But then when we looked out the window standing up, we couldn't see it. So I had my cell phone in my hand because it has a camera in it, mm-hmm. and there was nothing to do. So we decided, well, it must have been a nightmare. And God knows I have a few of those. And I had what had happened in the previous couple of hours, was brain bending, and I thought, yeah, maybe it is a nightmare.
Okay, we'll get to that. But all right, so it's 4:53 in the morning. You see this object,
right?
You stand up after waking your wife, and then you don't see it. Isn't it possible, Whitley, that just standing up removed it from your field of view?
This is exactly what happened. But so we went back to bed. I turned over, and there it is again, quite close to the house this time. And I don't think it was even just a few hundred feet away, and it was really looming. I mean, it was very big, and I thought, it was shocking. It was so close, and I jumped up again, grabbed the cell phone, ran to the window, and I couldn't see it. Then I realized it's the angle. It's the angle. So I bent down, and I still couldn't see it, so I rushed back to the bed, lay down on the bed, and I could see it again.
Right.
But this time, it was just going past the end of the windows, moving out toward the sea, and it was gone. I didn't see it again. And but it was just that angle I could see it at, but I could see it quite clearly at that angle.
All right. Why are you describing it as a drone?
Well, the interesting thing is, Linda sort of came up with that word, and I think maybe some of the people who first saw them did, because they don't look like they could be manned. There doesn't seem to be any crew compartment.
That's right.
They're large, complex, weird-looking things. I mean weird. They don't seem to have any, they're not aerodynamic at all. They don't have anything to do with lift as we understand it. And the way this thing moved, it obviously didn't. I mean, it didn't care about that wind at all. It was like it might as well been moving across a street or something. It was so smooth.
Could you make a guess at speed?
No, not fast. 20, 30 miles an hour at most. It was moving very slowly. It was not in any hurry. It was not in any trouble. It was just moving slowly along. And after that, I thought to myself, my God, what has gone on in this house over the past few hours in some way, I think, has to do with that thing and the way it was affecting my mind. And it was simply extraordinary, Art. I want to, before I go on, I want to read to you this is from the September 23 press release from Breitbart.com, and it's also repeated in the New Scientist magazine. Parallel universes really do exist, according to a mathematical discovery by Oxford scientists described as one expert as one of the most important developments in the history of science. Now, this is because this has been a theory, but these mathematicians have narrowed it down to the point they have nailed it down, and they believe that actual physical parallel universes are here now all around us.
And again, this is all determined mathematically.
This is theoretically in physics, yes, but now math for the first time is supporting the physics. And that's what's new. And it makes it, we haven't had too many incidents in the history of science where math and physics coming together like that have not turned out to be describing reality. In other words, this is probably real, what we're talking about. And now, what happened to me that night, and I can tell you about an earlier incident of this in a little while if you want to.
Well, I want to hear about the 2 hours prior to
exactly
4:53. Obviously, you feel that a parallel universe is at play here.
Oh, I think more than one. And I think what I experienced during the course of that night was basically living, experiencing, being conscious of myself and my life unfolding, our lives unfolding in a number of universes at the same time. And the fantastic part was that in one or two instances, I actually moved physically during the course of the evening into another world. At one point, I actually got up out of the bed and walked into the living room, and it was a completely different room.
Why you, Whitley? And why you again?
Why me?
Yes.
You know, Art, I've thought a lot about that, and possibly it strikes me that it started in my family when my Uncle Mickey got involved in the Roswell incident when he was at Wright Field.
Maybe that's it. I mean, the numbers just don't work. There are, numerically, I don't know, I guess you'll be able to tell me how many people are abducted every year or since it all began, but for one man to have had as much alien contact as Whitley Strieber has had seems to me numerically unlikely unless there's a big reason for it. I'm Art Bell. Indeed so. My guest is Whitley Strieber, and Whitley, over the course of his lifetime, has had a number of contacts, first with the Greys, if you'll recall, and now, well, now I'm not sure what he's had an encounter with, but in the 2 hours previous to an actual physical sighting of this craft, something happened, and in a moment, we'll find out what it was. Well, all right, just for the record, Whitley, this would be your first encounter since when?
Art, it's the first really intense one in a very long time, years. I can't say a specific date because there have been a few incidents that may have been encounters in the past few years, but they weren't so specific as this. And,
Okay.
This has gone so far beyond. One thinks of a close encounter as being kind of a formal experience where there's some sort of an abduction or some other type of interaction or communication that is kind of comprehensible.
Mm-hmm.
This was really almost beyond the event horizon of strangeness as far as I'm concerned.
All right. Again, and let's just cover this and then we'll go to those 2 hours, but numerically, the odds of Whitley Strieber, one man, having the number of encounters that you've had, years apart, albeit, it just doesn't work unless, as you pointed out, it all began and is continuing in it with you and your family.
Well, I don't think it's quite true that it would be that unusual. What would be unusual and is unusual are the cases where it is a single encounter in a whole lifetime. Mostly, people have this starting in their childhood and going right through their lives. Right. And then it starts generally happening to their children, and it goes through their lives. It is a generational and familial experience, and I know people who have had many, many more encounters than I have had, and some of whom have the visitors in their lives almost all the time, to the point where it becomes impossible to tell where reality ends and fantasy begins, because
Right.
they lose focus completely. I don't think I have lost focus. I've been really careful and attempting not to lose focus, and which is probably why I'm reporting now this encounter after so many years, and because there is an element of the real to it. I don't think it was imaginary. Now, going back to the familial aspect of it, I know that my generation in my family and the previous generation in my family have had experiences, because my uncle, while I don't think he never mentioned any close encounters to me, he was involved with debris, or knew about the debris that was brought from Roswell to Wright Field, and his commanding officer, General Arthur Exon, knew a great deal about it, and it was their comments about it that I based my novel, my work of fiction, Majestic, on.
Right.
About the Roswell incident. And incidentally, we're going to have a series, I think, on TNT if the writer's strike ever ends, called Majestic. They're all set to get started with it once the strike's over, so that'll be something interesting. It's not about the Roswell period in 1947. It's about what the Majestic group would be doing behind the scenes now. So it should be very interesting.
I thought that the writer's strike might have ended because I'm seeing some series come back with new episodes.
No, unfortunately, the strike hasn't ended.
Still going on.
Those episodes were all in production before the strike started.
Okay.
Or the scripts were completed before the strike started.
I see. All right. Let's get to the 2 hours in question now. I'd really like to know what went on during those 2 hours.
Okay. Well, we were in Santa Monica, where we borrow an apartment in Santa Monica from friends when we're here and are there. I'm not there now, but when we are there. And we went to bed about 11:30, and the first thing that happened was I had an urge to read something from the key, and which was unusual because I really don't pick up the key very often. I'm aware of what's in the key. Obviously, I've read it and written it and had it involved in my life for years. But I read this material, and then I had almost immediately afterwards, I had had an intense desire to meditate that was quite similar to what, although it didn't occur to me until afterwards. But it used to be, I would literally be called by the visitors to meditate and to go into the meditation room I had when we had our cabin in upstate New York, nightly, sometimes 3 or 4 times a night. And I didn't realize this was the same thing, but I went and I meditated for a while, and it was a perfectly nice, it was a very powerful meditation. It was a very physical, strong meditation. And then I went back to bed. I woke up quite agitated at about 2 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep. I was writing business emails at 2:17 because the next morning I looked on the emails I had written and I saw the time. I was sitting in there writing these business emails at 2:17.
All right, so we know you weren't asleep then.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Then I had got into bed, and I had it was like it was not the bed I had been lying in a few moments before, like as if I had gotten into another bed and was there, but we had dogs. We don't have any dogs.
Huh.
And there were dogs there, and what the hell could this have been? I wasn't asleep. And there were dogs, and it scared the dickens out of me because, there's not supposed to be any dogs in here at all. Nobody has dogs in this place.
Was this more or less immediately after you got admitted?
Yeah, immediately.
Because we know you were awake at 2:17. Now you're telling me you went and got in bed.
And then suddenly I was in a bed and in in what appeared to be a different room, and there were dogs there. There were dogs on the floor. And so I thought I didn't know quite what to think, and I got up, and I thought Ann had let dogs into the house somehow, and that they had come under the bed, and I was going to say to her, what is going on? I thought that while I was in the den, she must have let the dogs in. I couldn't understand how else they'd gotten into the place. But I got up, and I stepped into the living room to see if the door had come open. And it was not the same room. It was a completely different house. It was very strange. It had artificial trees in it. It was just radically different from anything I'd ever seen before. But there was almost a sense of deja vu about it. It was like a place I've always known. And then then the next thing I knew, I went back into the bedroom because I was afraid, for reasons that have to do with an experience I had over 20 years ago, about 20 years ago. I was afraid that I had gotten lost in this strange place. I rushed back into the bedroom. She was still lying in the bed. Now there were no dogs there.
But you confirmed it was Ann.
It was Ann. Oh, yeah. And I sat down on the side of the bed, and I thought to myself, what is going on here? Mm-hmm. I did not want to go back into the living room. And, I forgot to say before, when I turned around, when I first went into this living room, I turned around, and where the door to the bedroom had been, there was now a wall and a hallway leading off into the opposite direction.
Wow.
I could not get back initially into the bedroom at all. And this hallway was in the house that I lived in as a child. And Ann and I were also living in that house. The house in this life hadn't been sold. Right. It hadn't been, the new house has been built on the lot now. That hadn't happened. I was still living there. We were quite poverty-stricken, and she was struggling to keep the house clean. And then somehow I ended up back in the bedroom in this life with no dogs and no strange house and no strange living room and none of that, thinking that I was having some kind of a waking dream. And still, the idea of any playing out with my mind was not totally of my own generation, was out of, I just never even thought of the possibility. that possibility, the idea of the visitors being involved in any way whatsoever. I didn't think of it.
Okay.
So it went on, and eventually I found myself living or aware of being alive in a total of 5 different parallel universes, one of which Anne I had never even met Anne in. She was not in that one. And in the other 4, she was. In the 5th one, I had a child, a small boy. I had a little boy. My son is now an adult, but I had a much smaller, much younger child. And we were walking down toward a bay on the sea. And you understand, and this was the middle of the day. And in this universe, Anne had died in 2004 of the stroke. And I was with my grandson, who was now about 3, this child.
Oh, my God.
And it was just incredible. The whole experience, it was just, I have to tell you that either I have the most extraordinary imagination, or there was in some way some kind of reality involved here that is so far beyond the pale that
Oh, this doesn't sound like something your mind would make up in the course of a dream or anything else.
Not at all. It doesn't. Not at all.
My goodness, Whitley.
I know it.
So it was. How did you move from one to the next?
Well, the thing that was weird was that I actually didn't. At first, I did, but then I was in all of them at once. I can't even describe what it was like. It was like I was inside all of these different consciousnesses and all of these different lives, all at the same time.
Wow.
And I was just, here's they talk about the multiverse, but here's one of these guys talking. This is one of the scientists who's working on this, called David Papadoe. Says in the New Scientist in I guess this is the September 22 issue of the New Scientist, last September 22. He says, suppose that you are driving recklessly and narrowly avoid crashing into another car. You might think, lucky escape, but you should be feeling guilty about the passengers one of your other selves has killed. This is a scientist talking. He says, you hope your football team will win a match, but that's meaningless. They both win and lose every match they play. This is a scientist talking about the way they believe the world really is. And I think on that night, I got a taste of what is really happening, and I was left thinking to myself that we have some kind of filter that keeps us from seeing what we really are. Because if we did see what we really are, what we would be, is not individuals, but a kind of waveform moving through time on some incredible and mysterious journey. I mean,
that's really something.
It blew away my understanding of what it is to be human.
Well, it blows away our understanding of a lot.
Yeah.
If that really is the nature of everything, then the life we think we're leading is kind of like just one piece of a multifaceted matrix.
Exactly. But the interesting thing is that it didn't feel, you would think that something like that would feel aimless, like everything was kind of happening. But it didn't feel that way at all. It felt like that my soul, which is kind of expressing itself through all of these lives, has an aim that is much larger than any one of these lives sees. And for a few moments on that night, I was in the greater consciousness that is the real me. And I thought to myself, my goodness, it's a big thing to be a human being. It is much bigger than we have imagined.
Whitley, at any point were you aware of any entities, creatures, whatever you want to call them, manipulating what was occurring to you?
Well, I'll tell you, yes is the answer.
Oh.
And I didn't understand that until later. But at the time, when I lay on the bed, and every time I started to fall asleep, someone would grab two of my fingers and start pulling my hand off the side of the bed. And I never thought to look and see who that might be. But it was physical. Someone was there. Someone was there. Someone small. Someone with not large hands who could just close their fingers around two of my fingers.
Somebody wanted you to remain conscious.
To remain conscious. That is correct. And they kept waking me up by pulling my hand.
But you never saw this creature.
I never even looked for it. I didn't look at all. I was aware of this happening at the time, but it seemed like the most natural thing in the world.
So do you think all this was done just to make you aware of the nature of these various...
You know, I've wondered why it was done. I really have wondered, because it has a kind of there's no specific reason for it, except it embedded in my mind these new ideas.
You're a communicator. You write books about this kind of thing. You go on radio programs. You talk to people about this kind of thing. So maybe somebody wanted you to understand the real nature of things.
And I'll bet you that there are people listening to this, or will hear about it or learn about it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Now or in the future, and it will be very useful to them that somewhere someone will crack the code because of what happened. That's my guess. I don't think it has as much to do with me or even with our generation as it probably does with future generations, because in time, scientists will become emotionally able. It's all emotional. This whole thing about denial of the visitor's existence and denial of UFOs and all the laughing and stuff, it has to do with emotions and feelings of powerlessness that make us afraid. That will pass. And when it does pass, people will look back and they will listen to these recordings and they will think to themselves, well, here this man is reporting real events. Now we can set about understanding and finding the real laws of consciousness and life that made those events possible.
Did you at any point during this whole experience have any control over what you were moving through?
I was just trying to get back to bed. Basically, I mean, that was it. I was having a lot of unusual trouble.
Yeah, well, I can imagine some of it might have been uncomfortable for you. For example, moving...
Oh, God, yes.
Yeah, moving into a universe in which, or a dimension in which Anne was not alive would be very, very uncomfortable.
Horrifying. It was
horrifying, yes.
It was dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. And it was a place I did not want to be, but I am there. I'm there always. My life there is unfolding. And you know, Art, I think that there is a kind of there is a conscious that's kind of like a searchlight that goes from place to place, and that all the time as we live our lives, we move without realizing it.
All right, Whitley, hold it. We've got to hold it right there. We're coming up on a break. My guest is Whitley Strieber, and I don't think any of us have heard anything like what you're hearing tonight ever. Something for Whitley to think about during the break coming up. If the nature of things is as Whitley witnessed, then I wonder if that means that when you experience physical death, you only experience it in this universe, in this dimension. And when you die, there's you in essence don't miss a heartbeat. You go to another universe in which, I'm going to have to think about this, in which your soul is reincarnated at the beginning of something, or your soul then continues on, and you don't, in essence, even know you died, or, in other words, if this is the nature of everything, then indeed you don't die. You simply move. We'll be right back. Well, all right. Whitley, I wonder if you feel that when we experience physical death, that we simply move to another universe.
Well, I think my impression is that we use up these lives. I don't think that it's an infinite expression of being. In other words, we're not present in billions of universes, parallel universes. Each person is like a light shining across a limited number of universes, and then some may be expressed across more and some fewer. Maybe there are some who are only expressed across one or two, but I have a feeling that when we die in one, then perhaps we feel a sense of growing older or more mortal in another, or even that eerie feeling of a goose walking over your grave. But I think that eventually we die in all of the ones we're in. And we kind of run out of universes, and then it's when whatever it is that happens to us, that either we leave this process or we return to it in some way. I don't know, but what I do feel from what I experienced is that the whole thing that's going on here is much larger in a particular way, in that planets that have complex life on them, like ours, almost certainly are very rare in the universe. But what is happening on them, in the sense of this vast expression of being that's unfolding in consciousness on these planets, is just astonishing, because, in other words, there's one Earth here in this universe, but there are actually probably thousands of them expressed across a vast sea of universes. And so they may be rare, but they are really, really rich and complex and amazing.
All right. Well, the theoretical physicists that talk about the possibility of parallel universes also talk about the enormous amount of power that it would take to cross into one or even communicate with one.
Right.
Now, it may well be, you did see a craft at 4:53 a.m. After all of this, it may be that craft supplied the power, or it may be that there isn't that much power required and they did it in another way. What do you think?
Well, I had the Astronomer Royal on Dreamland a couple of years ago, Sir Martin Rees, and he said a very interesting thing. We talked about many things, including parallel universes. He's a really cool guy. He's like Michiko Kaku in that respect. And he said that it was believed that at that time, while they probably were real, that it would take more energy to cross the infinitely tiny distance between them than existed in either universe.
That's right.
But what it seemed to me was happening to me that night, on the 7th, was not that I was physically moving between universes, but that this consciousness, whatever this consciousness is, that normally lives in what I call this universe, was somehow freed and moving through the different bodies in different universes almost seamlessly. And I think that the presence of that object out there was why. I think it was applying some kind of technology, some kind of energy, if you will, or altering something in my body that enabled me to do this, and enabled me to see what was really what my life really was.
All right, we know you were awake at 2:17 because of the emails. Then you went back to bed, and other than your fingers being yanked to keep you awake, I don't know how to put this. How can you be sure that this wasn't a dream or a nightmare, depending on how you want to describe it?
Well, I thought about that, and one of the things that makes me think that I was wide awake is that the emails are completely cogent. They're not. There's nothing unusual about them. They're just a group of normal business emails that I would have written the next morning anyway.
No, I've got that, but you went to bed after the 2:17 emails, right?
Yeah, but what happened? There was no time lapse. I went into the bedroom, and once I sat down on the bed, this started to happen.
Right away.
Yeah, there was no sense of going to sleep or anything. Now, that said, I would never assert this because it's not fair to people. I can't prove it. I don't have any videotape of going to different universes. I don't have any. I didn't bring back anything strange from anywhere, physical. But what I can say is this is what I perceived. What actually happened, Art, heaven only knows. Goodness, it could have even been stranger than it seemed, for all we know.
Wow. All right.
Yes, there we are.
That's pretty much the telling of it, or is there anything we missed that's important?
Well, I don't think that I will tell you. I want to tell you another incident.
Sure.
This goes back 20 years, and this one was witnessed. And what happened was, I was taking a little boy who was one of my son's friends from our country house to a diner where I would meet with his father, and we would transfer boys. And his place was down in the Delaware Water Gap, and I was in upstate New York, and we would trade kids at this point. It was halfway between the two houses.
Right.
Okay, so I drive off of Route 17 in New Jersey at the Paranormal Mall, an exit I've taken 1,000 times. It's not exactly a mystical place. I mean, let's face it, the Paranormal Mall is just very ordinary.
Sure.
And as soon as I came off the mall, instead of going up toward the overpass, I came off the highway, I went down to a sunken highway. And I thought to myself, I've somehow taken a wrong turn. I don't know where I am, but I'm obviously not where I'm supposed to be, so I'll take the next exit and go back. But when we took the exit, we were not in this world anymore. We were driving along in a Jeep Cherokee with this kid, a 10-year-old, 11-year-old kid, who started, when he realized what was going on, he starts unlocking the door, and I'm pushing the automatic lock on the other side because the last thing I wanted for him was to jump out of the car, which he was scared to death, and that was what he was trying to do. Because here's what we were seeing. We were going down wide streets, a lot of foliage, big trees, sun dappling down through the trees, and set back from the streets were these buildings that were just oblong. They were squared off. They had no roofs, no peaks roof. They were flat roofed, and they were sandstone colored, and they had reliefs of big snakes on them. They were not even anything like any buildings I've seen anywhere in the world. And you'd see one, and then another on the other side of the street, and you'd turn the corner, and then up there'd be another one up back in some bushes. It was just terrifying. And I thought to myself, what in the world? How am I going? I'm afraid I've gotten lost in some kind of other world with somebody else's kid. And what if I never can get back? And I'm just going at random down these streets. Suddenly, I see sunlight at the end of one of the streets. Because there are a lot of trees. I go down that street, and there's a rough kind of field, and the street gets real rough. And I'm going through that, and then we find ourselves on a berm road beside what turned out to be Route 80, which was a good 20 miles from where we'd taken an exit 5 minutes before. Huh. All this time, the kid's not said anything. His dad is super skeptical and has explained not only to his son, but also to my son, that they shouldn't believe a word I say, that I have a big imagination, that communion is all in my head, et cetera, and so forth. So I'm sort of hoping the boy hasn't said anything because he's not, he's just sort of let it go. And we drive back in silence. Finally, we get back to the diner. The guy is standing in the bed of his truck, looking for us at this point. And we get back. The boy jumps out of the car and goes running across to his father, yelling, "Daddy, Daddy, Whitley took me on a ride through the Twilight Zone." Now, I got back then, and I got back now, but I am left kind of unstuck feeling. I feel like I could slip out somehow.
Well, I was about to ask that. Have you ever been concerned that you might arrive in a place that you cannot exit?
Absolutely. I have many times. I think of that all the time. In fact, Art, I normally wake up about 4:30 every morning, and I have since I had the first close encounter experience in 1985, in a state of shock. I wake up. I feel like something is about to go wrong, and I wake up suddenly. And yes, I have felt often, and I have been very obsessed with the possibility of people getting caught up in this and never coming back. Never really found a case. I found a couple of hints. There were hints here and there in the community letters, the letters we received, and there were a few cases that came up that are reflected in fictionally in my book, The Greys. That I created a situation in The Greys where a woman is taken, but she eventually gets back. And I've often wondered, are there cases where people disappear and never come back?
Well, of course there are.
A lot of cases of people disappearing. That happens all the time. It happens to the point where the police are not really very good about investigating cases of adult disappearance, especially if there's family trouble and so forth. Mm-hmm. But you think about here, and this is a very highly organized society, and Europe's highly organized. Most of the world aren't. It's not organized. People just disappear all the time, in fact.
Oh, absolutely correct.
Absolutely. So they could be pouring down a rabbit hole, and we don't even know.
Oh, yeah, but even in this well-organized, well-policed society, at least by comparison, people disappear all the time. Never heard from again, Whitley.
Oh, all the time. All the time. And, you think to yourself, in many of these cases, you look at it and the guy is just someone is up to their ears in debt or, having terrible family problems, and you figure, well, they just walked out on their life.
Well, I'm sure there is some of that.
But other cases, it's not like that.
Right.
There was a case here in California a few years ago of a poor little boy who was out camping having a picnic with his family, and he walked over to their pickup truck to get some snacks or a toy or something, and just disappeared from the face of the earth. Was never seen again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these things happen. Now you called this craft a drone.
Yeah.
Drones are pretty recent in ufology, quite recent, actually.
Yeah, last summer.
What would you imagine that this movement from traditional craft, saucers, if you will, triangles, whatever, the movement to drones, what does that mean that we're getting drones all of a sudden? It must have, in the world of ufology, it must have some meaning.
Well, first of all, except for me and Linda and a few others, the world of ufology has not addressed these things because the imagery was too clear and the things were so strange that people, without really looking into it at all, just dismissed it as impossible and forget it. And it must be some kind of a joke.
Too clear.
Too clear. But it's no joke. And if it wasn't real, we wouldn't have elderly retired Army officers from Alabama coming forward with pictures in hand and talking to us at length, and people willing to leave them their names and say in detail what happened and what they saw.
Right.
It wouldn't be like that. If that's not how the hoaxes work. They don't work like that. And that's what we do have. So these things are being seen, and they are just off the wall weird. In fact, they're so clear, in some cases we thought maybe they are ours. And,
that's what I thought.
Well, yeah, but look at it this way. We just talked about people disappearing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there is another world in this universe that is peopled by human beings now. We've had the visitors around here for 60 years, and so far about the best science and the media have been able to do is to say that maybe there's something to this, but no, we couldn't dare talk about them actually being involved with us. They're heavily involved with us. We're why they're here, almost certainly. So, and goodness knows what they may be doing or what they may have accomplished in 60 years. Anything could be true at this point. So the drones could be human from another world, but from another human world, there could be anything going on like that. I mean, I just think that, we've gone really around the corner with this thing by ignoring.
All right. Well, how about this, Whitley? Could a drone be a reconnaissance craft from a parallel universe?
A penetrant, something penetrating from a parallel universe. The answer is yes, I think so. I think it could be something penetrating from a human parallel universe, for example, from a parallel universe, a parallel Earth, which is a human Earth,
right? And
that they have in another universe, they have figured out how to cross the barrier,
but perhaps not with biological entities.
Not biologically, and yet, what happened to me and the little boy? We were in a Jeep. We were in a Jeep, Art. And it happened. It was a real event.
Well, it was real to you. It was real to the boy.
And to the Jeep. I've often thought to myself, what if I had stopped and gotten out of the car?
Right.
And I think to myself, that I would never have done. I might have done it if I was alone, or if I was with my own wife and son. But not with somebody else's kid like that. It just didn't seem fair. My objective was clear. Get that boy back to his family.
Is it possible that you were going down normal streets, but something or someone was making your brain see something entirely different?
Our brains.
Your brains, yes. Both.
But remember this, or I haven't said this yet. This didn't happen. It started the night before with an event so bizarre that I'm telling you, here's what happened the night before.
Oh, indeed, you didn't tell me that.
Not yet. I was waiting for the moment, and this is the moment. If we've got time, we've got a couple minutes, I think.
Well, actually, we don't.
Well, we'll come back to it.
All right, so an even more incredible part of it occurred prior to this drive through some other place and some other time. My guest is Whitley Strieber, and I know this is pretty wild stuff. Either you're going to identify with it because you experienced something just like it. Many of my fast blasters say they did, by the way. Or you think Whitley's crazy. Here I am. Whitley Strieber is my guest. Yes, he's telling an incredible story, no question about it. Interesting part, it's kind of backed up by not just theoretical physicists, but now mathematicians as well. In other words, the possibility of these other places, these similar but not quite the same other places, parallel universes, if you will, is being backed up by science. Tonight you're hearing a story that probably has you, well, either saying Whitley's crazy as a loon, or nodding your head, oh yeah, because so many of you apparently have experienced something very similar. I'm getting all kinds of fast blasts of people who say, I know exactly what Whitley's talking about. So he's not alone. In a moment, the rest of the story. Well, all right, strange as what you just heard is, here we go. Even stranger, prior to this event of going down the street that he described with that young boy, what preceded it, Whitley?
Well, the night before, I woke up in the middle of the night in the following state. I woke up, I was conscious, but there was no one there. In other words, I had no body. My body was gone. Oh. I, quote unquote, was in the bed, but there was no physical presence there.
Now that would be really frightening.
Well, yeah.
I mean, to be conscious and then to be conscious of the fact that your physical self is not there would be terrifying.
A lot of your listeners, I'm sure, have had out-of-the-body experiences, and some of them are probably practiced at inducing them. And there's even the Robert Monroe Institute. Sure. The Monroe Institute teaches people how to do that and many other things.
Sure.
But to wake up like that and to not know where your body is, yeah, that is not something you want to necessarily do every night.
No, I would think normally if you left your body, you would be able to see your body and be aware of the fact that there it is and I'm separate from it.
But so I didn't know where it was. And when I tried to move, I went down through the floor, and suddenly there was my body standing in the bedroom where the two boys were. Both boys were awake, and I was talking to them.
Oh, my God.
And then I entered my body, and I had no idea of what had just transpired. And so I said, well, good night, walked back upstairs and went back to bed, and thought to lay there thinking, what in the world has happened? Because I couldn't dismiss it. What I like to do with these things is to say, well, it's got to be some kind of a dream. And then I can keep on going on with my life. But this one was pretty hard, and so I figured, okay, I'm just going to say that this didn't happen. The next morning, I told Ann about it. I felt like when morning came, and I said, this weird thing, and then we go down, we're making breakfast, and suddenly the room of the boys' door opens. They're awake now, and they come rushing up. They say, yelling about me seeing Whitley. Whitley came down through the ceiling last night.
The two boys? The two boys said you came down through the ceiling?
They both saw this.
Wow.
And Art, it's not that I am crazy. It's that something is crazy in something around me. And around a lot of people. I'm not the only. I'll bet you'll find other people have had very similar experiences, because you know better than anybody. People in the real world have really weird things happen to them all the time, to the extent that what you have to say in the end is there is part of our lives that we don't talk about because it would derange our ability to understand and to make sense of our world, to make sense of it. Because when you start to talk about things like this and start to recognize these things, the world stops making the kind of convenient sense we need to live our lives, do our jobs, have our families, and go on every day.
That's quite true.
That is why we shut that out. But this universe and this experience of being human are just far stranger and more incredible than we allow ourselves to see.
Well, when you start adding on the witnesses, as you have, it gets a lot more difficult to just, dismiss as a flight of fancy, a dream, a mental condition, whatever. Whitley came through the ceiling. 2 boys saying that?
Yeah. Throughout my experience of life, of this, there has been always just enough witness to prevent me, I should say, from doing what I've always, I guess, wanted to do, which is to dismiss it as the work of an overactive imagination.
Sure.
So crazy is not a word I would apply to myself because I live a very rational, normal life. And,
well, no, but some listening might.
Well, they might. Yeah, they might. But I mean, I in my own life, I know how I live, and I don't live as a crazy person. I have a very well-organized life. I'm sitting here in a nice, neat apartment. I have reasonably well-kept accounts. I'm not. I'm far from. I'm not disorganized in any way, and I'm not paranoid, and I'm pretty moderate politically. I'm not an extremist in anything, and there's nothing about me that's crazy except my perception.
Well, there are functional disturbed people, but not with witnesses.
Not with witnesses, and there's more witnesses. We used to have people up to our cabin. We had them up for years in groups who would have close encounters, and not only that, Anne she could tell before she even invited people who would have close encounters and who wouldn't, and she would invite them.
By what means?
We don't know. We have no idea. We have no idea.
So Anne has an intuitive ability of some sort.
A very strong one. A very strong one. And the visitors, it wasn't something that was like dreamlike. The visitor would come into the house at times. We struggled many times, and at one time even with low-light cameras to get imagery of them, and they intentionally avoided that. They wouldn't let that happen.
Well, again, the appearance of these drones so widely marks a sea change in what's going on. Has Linda, I haven't had an opportunity to talk to Linda, has Linda had any thoughts on what this might mean, what kind of change we're in the middle of right now?
No, we've talked about that, not on the air yet, but we've talked about that privately. We speculated about it, and I can't speak for Linda, but we're both very curious about what it may mean. But there's another thing happening now, Art. There is a big UFO flap going on in this world, but because it never reaches beyond the level of, it's very localized in the reporting. You don't necessarily realize that there are things happening in Jakarta, in Oklahoma City, in 2 different places in England. A couple of days ago, Nick Pope, the British UFO, former Ministry of Defense UFO researcher, announced that an image taken by a guy in England is probably the clearest UFO video ever taken in the history of ufology in Britain just a few days ago. And
I have a UPI story here, Whitley. December 23rd, London, 2007. The British government will soon release previously classified details regarding hundreds of reported sightings of unidentified flying objects, and it goes on. Now, I thought they had already done so pretty much in England, but apparently there's a very great deal they had not released, and they're getting ready to release.
And, I think that this material will probably be fairly innocuous. I think that it'll be some very convincing sightings. But the things I don't think that they will release is any analysis of what may be really going on. And I know such analysis exists. I'm sure it does. It must. Because early on, General Exon told me they thought that this was a scout ship preparing for an invasion. They must have been writing reams of stuff about what they thought might be going on back in those days that we've never seen, both here and in the UK. The two countries were closely allied at the time, and they would have been sharing intelligence about anything as provocative as this, of course.
I guess our government, if asked, would say that we have no such files. Since Blue Book, there's been nothing. Nothing officially investigated by the government, which we all know is BS.
You know, some years ago, the now deceased emeritus president, I believe he was, of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Dr. Walter Orr Roberts, introduced me at the World Affairs Conference at the University of Colorado. And in the audience were many of the members of the Blue Book Committee. And these people told me, and Dr. Roberts said the same thing. Dr. Roberts had been the original choice to chair the committee, and he wouldn't do it because he said that it was very clear from the beginning that that the conclusion was already foregone. They were going to conclude there was nothing in it, and he said the data does not support that conclusion, and I refused to do this for that reason. And then he introduced me, and afterwards, one of the committee members even apologized to me and said, "I'm so sorry that this was done. It was wrong."
Oh.
And the knowledge that has been left and abandoned and left lying around without being touched because of the government denial of this and the government's inability to address this and deal with it in a meaningful way is just tragic. Who knows what we might have learned from this? My disjointed, confused stories. What if real science was being applied here?
Oh, sure.
What a difference that would make.
Well, what would you think would be the most likely reason, Occam's razor here, that our government would keep secret whatever it is they do know?
Okay, I have two reasons. One of them was told me by my uncle, and the other was told me by General Exon. My uncle was speculating. He said, well, if these people are being kidnapped, like you say, and the government can't do anything about it, they're never going to admit that unless they absolutely have to.
Right.
Now, the other one was very interesting. It was that a physicist called Dr. John von Neumann back in the early 50s had written a short paper, classified paper, stating that it's possible that our perception mediates the way the world actually is, and that these creatures, even if they're only from another planet and not from a parallel universe or so forth, have a very limited ability to enter our world because our minds reject them, in effect. And if the government admits that they are real, this could be a tripwire. It could open a door that could never be closed again. And we have no idea what that would mean and can't know. We can't test it. It's untestable. I wrote a short story called The Open Doors, which is in the subscriber section of my website, which people who go in there can read. And incidentally, I will also be continuing this on Saturday morning live in my chat room in that subscriber section. So anyone who wants to do that, who's a subscriber to Unknown Country, should be there at 10 o'clock Pacific time Saturday morning.
Okay, if we were to raise this beyond the laugh at the end of the newscast, if we were to put it into the minds of millions, and they were then to begin to consider it and observe it, it would change everything.
What if we did that? What if we put it into the minds of millions? If the government said, okay, it's real, and everyone changed and began to assume that, and that meant that the visitors could come pouring into our world completely freely, something that they had never been able to do before. And we did not like what they were and what they were doing, but we could never go back again.
All right. The door you open and can't close.
Can't close. And that would be an incredibly compelling reason that would explain the government's relentless, unflinching denial of this in the face of completely convincing evidence. And anyone who says the evidence isn't overwhelmingly convincing is simply blind.
Whitley, is it your opinion that they, in quotes, want the door open?
Well, I think they're here. I could never speculate about what their motives may be. I can't even speculate about that. All I can say is they're around, and they seem to be, especially in the past couple of years, really around a lot, and in a lot of unusual new ways. I like that thing that's up on your website, up on Coast's website, of that strange sort of smoke trail that was taped over Canada. That's an example of the kind of odd sort of phenomenon that keeps being reported from all around the world. All kinds of, not that particular phenomenon, but other weird things seem to be happening. There are constantly now, I get photographs of holes in clouds where there'll be a cloud cover with a big round hole in it. What is that about?
Maybe, Whitley, they're concerned about that door opening as well, and maybe that's why they don't, as so many people have said it, that's why they don't land on the White House lawn.
Maybe it's true. Maybe they realize that if the door did open, it would ruin us in a particular sense. You know.
So maybe the only kind of contact that is permissible is that which allows plausible deniability.
Well, look at me. Here's a guy.
Well, you're plausibly deniable. I mean,
very plausibly deniable. I'm a horror novelist.
Somebody can sit out there and listen to all this and say, come on.
I'm a horror novelist, a highly imaginative person. I'm really good at describing strange things that happen to me, but at the same time, I'm a professional writer of scary, weird stories, and now I'm suddenly claiming that they're all real. I mean, it's easy to deny that. I'm not Carl Sagan, that's for sure.
So maybe both sides live in some fear of that door opening. Maybe all sides.
I think you're making a really fascinating point, because either they're out there banging on the door and we're not opening it, or they don't want it opened either. And there's a lot of reasons why that second thing might be true. Especially because the last thing they would want may be for us to just be totally concentrated on them and not living our lives and unfolding in the way that they would like to watch and learn.
Well, we might end up wrecking their lives or their dimension.
Yeah, it might be like opening the door might be like letting a lion out of the cage.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sure. So it could be ruination for both, and maybe they're trying to figure out how to initiate contact and keep us both essentially intact. And maybe that's what these probes are, if you want to call them probes, drones, whatever you want to call them. They're obviously unmanned, as we understand manned.
Well, we don't know that. We don't know what...
Well, right. I mean, the creature could be the size of an ant.
Right.
I suppose.
I guess.
But by our standards, if we understand how a craft would be manned, as in human manned...
They don't look manned.
No, they don't look manned. All right. We're going to take a break here. After the top of the hour, we're going to do something probably somewhat dangerous and open the lines. And I guarantee you're going to hear people who are going to be telling Whitley, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm Art Bell. Indeed, the desert where the clouds are rolling in and it's getting ready to rain like crazy, they say, for 5 days or so. Hope we don't get flooding. My guest is Whitley Strieber, and oh, what a story we've had this night. Actually, a multitude of them. But nevertheless, pretty wild stuff pretty interesting stuff. And judging from the fast blasts I'm getting, a lot of you have had similar experiences. At any rate, those are the phone numbers. If you'd like to join us, if you have a question or a statement, it's coming right up. Well, all right. Before we go to the lines, which we're just about to do, Whitley, is there anything you'd like to get on the air with regard to the stories or anything else for that matter prior to going to the lines?
Well, yeah, one last thing I would like to say, and it's germane to the fact that you're getting these fast blasts from other people who have had similar experiences. That doesn't surprise me, and the reason is this. After I published Communion, I thought, and certainly my publishers thought, that this had to be one of the weirdest books ever written, and at the time, I thought it would be just kind of small thing that, that not a lot of people would respond to it because it was just some strange thing that happened maybe to 5 people. And what turned out to be the case was my experience was small potatoes compared to what happens to most people. I mean, the ordinary individual was having far, far stranger things happen to them than it so far happened to me. Amazing stuff.
I don't know how many of these you've investigated, people you've talked to have had similar experiences, but I guess I would ask, if you had, how many you bought and how many you think could be attributed to a dream, a nightmare, a mental condition, anything other than reality?
Well, the interesting thing about the letters is that I would say probably close to half of them involved whole families. Or I'll pull one situation out of the back of my mind. A situation where a couple are sitting in their living room watching TV, and suddenly a gray walks in with their little baby in his arms.
Oh.
I mean, then that's actually a fairly ordinary one. And what I noticed was, in reading the letters, that a great number of them involve that kind of mutual experience or group experience, and this was very striking. And the other thing that was very striking about it was that so many of them involved not just close encounters of apparent aliens, but the aliens would have people's dead friends and relatives with them quite often. I mean, go figure.
I am trying to go figure, and that's why I said earlier to you that following physical death, there may be a link here, or it feels like there's a link here.
I don't think we have any real idea of what life is and no idea what death is. I think we're just guessing about what death is.
I'll give you that. All right, to the lines we go, west of the Rockies. You are on the air with Art Bell and Whitley Strieber. Hi.
Hi, Art. Hi, Whitley. Thank you for doing this show.
Sure.
Whitley, I have a question for you. I've been listening to Coast for a couple of years, and I haven't heard anything like this, but I'm wondering if maybe just hearing about alien abductions has induced one, or not perhaps an experience, but a dream or something. But I did have an extremely vivid dream or experience. The Thanksgiving weekend, when I had friends visiting, I was sleeping in my living room so they could use my bedroom. And I woke up to being in my living room with a bright light, everything lit. And then I was just aware of being surrounded someone on my right, someone on my left, and someone at my feet. And always in the past, I've always thought these experiences sounded kind of cool. I was so frightened. It was so real. And there was no way out. And they had complete, absolute control over my body. And I knew I could open my eyes, but I was petrified beyond anything I've ever experienced before. And they were manipulating my body with light and sound. And I'm wondering if you've ever heard of anything like that, or if this was just a dream from listening to too much Coast to Coast.
Well, obviously, that could be the case. It could easily be a dream from listening to too much Coast to Coast. I think if you had never listened to Coast before, or never thought about this before, and this had happened, I'd be inclined to say, well, maybe it has some reference to reality. Now, that said, it's very familiar. The
light and sound part?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The light part especially, not necessarily the sound part, but the light part. The sound part, I'm sure I could find cases where that had happened. Because it rings a vague bell with me, but they're not frequent. The light part is just endemic to the experiences. I've experienced that myself.
Like the whole room lit up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I can tell you there's an entire town in this country that had that happen all at the same time. That is, I have relatives because as we talked about earlier, this runs in families, and I mean the strange position of, I come from a pretty conservative, old-fashioned family, and I've had on my mother's side 3 different relatives come to me and say, Whitley, you must never say this to anyone else in the family at all, but this happened to me, and then describe something like this. So
nothing. Does the sound ring a bell? Because it was such a high pitch. There were 2 sounds. It was like a high pitch and an extremely bass pitch. And when it got amped up, I convulsed. And it was so. I mean, I was completely aware that I had no control over my body, and at the same time, it was the experience of these quote-unquote beings. It was almost like they were, I couldn't reach them. I work with animals, and when I look at an animal, when I see an animal, you get feedback immediately in the presence of an animal or a person. Even plants, you can feel a vibration there. These things seem so, not there in a way, but they were definitely beings, but they didn't have any care in them.
There was no sense of affect, of emotional
compassion, or
right.
Being aware that I was petrified to the point of, like, when I came to after this, I was shaking with fear. And it was almost like, it wasn't like I woke up, it was like it was over and I could open my eyes now.
Well, one of the things that people who came to my cabin used to periodically experience was human beings, or human-looking beings, that were totally and completely lacking in any emotion whatsoever and just seemed to be doing a kind of job. But I want to get back to that feeling of being out of control of your own body. And you mentioned working with animals. I would suspect that you mostly work with domesticated animals. What you're talking about is what it is like to be wild. This is the way a wild creature feels when it's captured. This is the way capture feels to something that's wild. And it's certainly familiar to me. I felt that many times. I got to the point where I no longer felt it because they were taming me. The same way I would have tamed a little raccoon or something I had found in the woods.
Woodley, most of my dreams relate to real-world things, most of them. I've never had a dream of anything otherworldly or a dream involving creatures that I would regard as non-human. And if exposure to Coast AM would cause this sort of thing, I should be a victim. So
I would think that this would be. Now, you see, I'm not in that state. I have dreams and memories just that are absolutely that have a very original sense to them. Like we were talking about earlier, when I was describing the experience of the seventh, and you were saying it seems like it's something that you couldn't imagine.
Right.
And I have that all the time. Now, as far as this caller is concerned, I could never tell you whether or not this really happened. I cannot tell you even if I was able to say, yes, something happened that was outside of your mind. Then I would also have to add, but I have no idea what that was.
Well, maybe as long as we can keep saying that, that keeps the door closed. East of the Rockies is Becky in Indiana.
Hi, how are you doing tonight?
Just fine.
I am so grateful to be able to talk to both of you. And Whitley, your book 2012 is outstanding so far.
Oh, thanks.
It's just an absolute, really, it's close to a lot of people's hearts. And I wanted to ask you, do you think in any way that these things that you guys are calling drones could be manned by something that's more of an energetic being? And I ask this because I have a photograph, and I've already sent it to Coast a couple of days ago, of an actual, looks like a UFO type craft with just many orbs with like fireball tails. They look like little comets all over the place, and I wonder, could they possibly be some sort of, little things that came in that little craft?
Well, another thing I don't think we understand is the nature of life and what is alive. We think of biological entities as being what's alive, and nothing else is alive.
That's our only point of reference.
Right. But I'm not so sure that's the case. I think that life, or rather consciousness, may attach to many different manifestations of nature, besides physical bodies. And it could well be that some kind of energetic force is behind these things, but my impression of them is that they are far more physical, even than the clearest UFO photographs we've ever had. They are just incredibly physical. That was one of the reasons most of the UFO investigators just dismissed this out of hand.
Right.
Because they're so detailed and so physical, and and in that sense, it's the exact opposite. It's just as far from energetic beings as you could get.
Right. Well, I had been shooting orbs for over a year in my own backyard, and I have literally hundreds of pictures of these different types of orbs, and I've done many a times where I've actually called them into the picture, and they are sentient. They do have a conscience, and the UFO that I got in the picture the one time was a pure accident. I didn't see it. I normally would take my final pictures off my porch as I went in, but this particular time I came out and I could see the orbs off in the distance, so I stuck the camera way up above my head and just took the shot because that was the only chance of getting the ones I was looking at. I had only seen the 3, but there were dozens, and later when we looked at the picture, in the bottom right-hand corner was the most brightly yellow-colored, most awesome-looking, interesting craft I've ever seen in any of the UFOs, and it's already been sent to Coast. So
okay, they have not yet published the photos.
I guess not, but we sent them a couple of days ago.
Okay, well, we'll look for them to be published. In the meantime, thank you very much for the call.
Let me tell you something, an interesting thing, at least about orbs that happened in my life. I met a guy who was photographing a lot of orbs, and of course, being me, my initial impression was, well, this is dust particles on the camera, or it's something to do with digital photography or something. But so I went over to his house, and I participated in some of this photography, and some of it was pretty interesting. And the most interesting thing was this. I was standing out in the backyard. It was night, and I was alone. We'd had dinner, and there were quite a few people there. And I had the most exquisite, wonderful sense. I was away from the other people, of my mother being present. It was just lovely. And I had a deep, of course, lovely relationship with my mother, mostly. Complicated, of course, in some ways. Mm-hmm. But it was just so overwhelming. I was just standing there with my eyes closed. I felt like I was communing with my mother. And someone took a picture of me at that moment. Mm-hmm. And darned if there isn't an orb in the picture right in front of me. Huh. And it's up on my website in one of the sections. I hopefully will remember the name of the section in just a second.
I've always had mixed feelings about orb photography.
Me too. But that, to me, said something about that there may be something more in there than one would assume.
Very quickly, John in New York, you're on with Whitley Strieber. Hi.
Hello, Art. Hello, Whitley. Happy New Year.
Hi, thank you.
My question, well, it's more of a statement. Now, I definitely believe in UFOs. I've seen one myself, but when it comes to abductions, I really can't buy that. We have thousands of pictures of UFOs in the air, but people that repeatedly keep getting abducted, they never, seem to put a tape and a VCR and, tape outside the house and inside the house. A tape should have popped up by now.
Well, that's a good point. The only thing that has popped up are implants. I tried many times to tape this and was unsuccessful because whatever was doing it made, in a couple of cases, a conscious effort to avoid being taped. Now,
did you ever get anything?
Only the implant.
Well, I know you got that.
Yeah, which is in my ear, and which has been the doctor who attempted to remove it is still very much around. And when I was working with Dr. William Mallow, we studied a number of these objects, and we got things like one of them under the electron microscope. It was quite clear that this was a very pure piece of iron. It could have easily been, it's just iron, just ordinary iron. But when we went for X-ray diffraction, it was invisible to the X-ray machine. We left it in there for 36 hours, and it never showed up in that machine, and yet it was a piece of iron.
Well, that wouldn't be ordinary iron.
No, exactly. But what was different about it? We had no way to detect the difference. And Dr. Roger Lear, in his latest implant removal, they detected FM transmissions coming out of the object before they removed it. Again.
And never to be forgotten, the testimony of a surgeon who got close to it with a scalpel, and it moved. I'll never forget that. All right, from the high desert, I'm Art Bell. Good morning, everybody. I am Art Bell, in for George Norrie. Well-deserved vacation underway. Listen, a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Gary Ridnour sent me his book called simply Pandemic. It's about the bird flu, and it just scared the hell out of me. So tomorrow night's program is going to be scary, truly frightening. And with that in mind, decide to tune in or not. But I'm telling you right now, it is frightening. In a moment, Whitley Strieber will be right back with you. Well, all right, Whitley, here we go again. Ready?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Jeff. Hi, Jeff, you're on the air.
Hi, good evening, Art, Whitney. It's a pleasure speaking with both of you gentlemen.
And you as well,
Indeed.
Sir. What's up?
Briefly, Whitney, I had an experience to share with you. It was similar to what you were discussing. I wanted to apologize. I tuned in a little later, but there was a conversation, a dialogue between you and Art where you were speaking of, I'm not sure, I guess it was about there were the two young boys.
Right.
Personally, I'm a father of two adopted boys. I'm a proud father. One, Sean and Craig. And there was a period for about the past 2 years where I would have these recurring dreams, I suppose you would call them, where I would be. It was an older house. Well, really, the type of house isn't important, but I briefly want to explain to you. I would see these two young boys. However, they were not my sons. And what I basically wanted to ask you is, since I tuned in late, I'm not really familiar with what your expertise is, your study is. If you could tell me if there's any sort of resources, or if you could maybe provide me with some sort of explanation, because I've never really had a reoccurring dream, especially for such a prolonged period of I would say about a couple of years. I'll let you go. Thank you, gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm left rather helpless because I can't. There isn't enough information. However, if what and to the listener, I'll explain what we were talking about earlier was parallel universes, and I guess the only thing I can say would be to listen to the show on Streamlink if you do that tomorrow, or go to Unknown Country and read my current journal entry. Go to unknowncountry.com and get an idea of what that was about. And if possibly it could be that you were touching on another life in another universe where you have different children.
Perhaps
Could that be true, or maybe it was just a dream, or they were ghosts, or you just don't know?
Yeah, I think you ought to just review everything you just said, or as you pointed out, read about it, and then decide if it's the same thing.
Exactly.
Susan in Florida, you're on with Whitley.
Hi, Art and Whitley. It's a great pleasure to talk to both of you. Thank you for the show. It's very interesting and I think very, very poignant. I wanted to ask you a couple questions, and one question, then I wanted to make a statement. Howard Menger, who was a UFO contactee or extraterrestrial contactee back in the 1950s, wrote two books. One, the original, was From Outer Space to You, that sold 1 million copies in the 1950s, and then later on he was suppressed for 35 years by the government purposefully, and then he wrote The Highbridge Incident, talking about the suppression of his information. The only difference with Whitley was that he had similar experiences of bilocation and coming in and out, where he'd be in two places at the same time with witnesses and really unusual situations. But he also he met with extraterrestrial beings that were angelic and were compassionate and were beautiful-looking people, and that he said one of the biggest secrets our government has is that they're extraterrestrials that look like you and I, that live here and inhabit the planet and walk around and work with our governments and our medical people and our hospitals, etc. And I've met other contactees, which is, I have the first group, the Florida UFO Research and Study Group, and my main area of interest has always been the contactees in particular, not the abductees who I feel are victims, whereas the contactees are volunteers. We're like George Adamski and so many others, Elizabeth Clara, Truman Bethram, George Van Tassel, etc. But one of the things that Connie Menger said, who actually was the author of the books and got all the information extracted from Howard, she said, the reason the ET presence is not known is because they don't want to destroy our civilization. In other words, any time a civilization of greater technology comes in contact with one of lesser technology, it has always destroyed the one of lesser technology, such as the American Indians and the Europeans with their guns and rifles and cannons and horses, etc. So what they're trying to do is integrate very gradually the knowledge and information. As you see now, the technology is being integrated. In the last 50 years, we have tremendous advances in technology, and it has not destroyed our civilization as yet. In other words, we wouldn't want to go into a cage of monkeys and all of a sudden take over and say, okay, I'm going to teach everybody now how to use a fork. Because more than likely you give every monkey a fork and they'd start jabbing each other and poking each other's eyes out. You know what I mean? So the responsibility is tremendous. But my question for Whitley was, have you ever tried to become an experiencer and stop the fear? Because fear is the opposite of love. And if you just experienced what you're going through without that tremendous fear, would that change things?
All right.
Well, this is a lot more complicated than it may seem to you, and the answer is that what I'm doing has to do with exploring fear in such a way that it is gradually dissipated, and I can't do that by standing outside of it. I have to stand inside of it. I have to walk that path. As far as there being people on this planet that look human but are not in fact from this planet, I'm personally quite certain that that's the case. And then there's also here a really wonderful point that's been made that reflect about this problem that we touched on earlier also, Art, of this gap between them and us.
Right.
That if they try to fill that gap too soon, it totally disempowers us. And when a higher technological civilization touches a lower one, the lower one totally focuses on what it can get from the higher civilization and forgets about it. And this is reflected in a little piece by D.B.H. Kuyper and Michael Morris in the April of 1977 edition of the magazine Science, where they speculate that if E.T. were to come here, the only thing they might be interested in from us would be innovation, a sort of companionship. But they would therefore remain secret so that they wouldn't just cause us to totally focus on them, thus ceasing to be an independent civilization, which would happen. And now let me express to you the tremendous challenge that they may face. If you can imagine Jane Goodall trying to teach troops of chimpanzees in the wild who and what they really are and where they really are, in such a way that they have an equivalent understanding in chimpanzee terms that a human being would of those realities. And that is a huge challenge.
It certainly is. All right, on to way up to Ontario, Canada, and Kevin, you're on with Whitley Strieber.
Hello, Mr. Strieber.
Hi.
Hello, Art. How are you doing?
Fine.
Yes, first of all, I got a question for Mr. Strieber, and then Art, I got to tell you why I was inspired by Coast to Coast AM.
Sure.
Mr. Strieber, I got to ask you, have the Greys ever been in direct contact with humankind before?
Prior to now?
Yes.
Well, there's a very interesting book by Jacques Vallée called Passport to Magonia, where it's out of print now, I think, but if you might be able to find a copy of it at a used bookstore, where he traces instances of apparent of this being present for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years. And he says that the old fairy faith of Northern Europe is a different way of looking at what we now call the Greys.
Great.
So, yeah, it's probably been with us for a while.
Something about Coast?
Yes, and Art, yes, I have to say that Coast to Coast AM has been, as was mentioned earlier in the program, that Coast to Coast AM has been an inspiration to some people. It was a very big inspiration to me in a certain way that I had a few problems before I started listening to Coast to Coast AM. I had a bad bout of insomnia, and also I had a point in my life where I didn't know what I wanted to do. And after I started listening to Coast AM, for some reason, I started sleeping a lot better than I did before, and beforehand, I didn't know what I wanted to get into.
Well, I hope that it means we put you in a better mental place and not just put you to sleep, as it were.
Yeah, let's hope.
All right. Kathy in Indianapolis, you're on with Whitley Strieber and Art Bell. Good morning.
Hi, Art.
Hi.
I just want to kind of reassure Whitley that I kind of have a philosophy of life that combines technology with different religious aspects, in that if you think of your life as being a sine wave with highs and lows, and ordinarily you draw that as a line, but draw it as a circle. That's the circle of life with its highs and lows. That's a single phase. But in electrical generation, we use like 3-phase generators where we have sequential phases, but they're slightly out of sync. And if you look at reincarnation, say you complete your first phase, you enter a second phase, but due to a little lag during reincarnation, your next phase is a little bit out of sync. So each phase of your reincarnation, you have these phases of lives slightly out of sync. When you meditate, you're going from peak to peak to peak of all these phases. So you stay at this high energy, peaceful thing. What's happening, I think, when you feel bad or experience things is that these peaks and phases of your sine wave cross. So sometimes you cross back into and see things from a previous life. Sometimes you cross into a phase that you haven't entered yet. So you see things maybe it's from your future.
Kathy, we don't often get women, particularly, or anybody else making electronic sine wave type analogies. So that's very, very interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah, thank you for this call. It's really fascinating.
What I want to reassure you is don't worry about not being able to come back. Your phases will cross back over to the phase you're in. And when you meet the person who's your soulmate, that's someone whose phases are exactly in sync with yours.
All right. Thank you very, very much for the call. That is fascinating. I'm not sure that it totally satisfies me that there's no danger of not coming back. And again, the reason I give for that, and Whitley shared that as well, there have been an awful lot of people that have simply virtually disappeared off the face of the earth. And where'd they go? Where did they go? David in Alberta, you're on with Whitley Strieber and Art Bell. Good morning.
Hi, how's it going?
Fine.
Okay, I just wanted to mention that I've been able to communicate with all sorts of things ever since I was a kid.
Things or entities or what?
Entities, celestial beings, whatever you would call them. And I've never been able to understand exactly what they've been saying because it's in a different language. But I just want to mention that.
All right, that alone is interesting, Whitley. Yes. At times when you have had communication, has there been a language barrier? Are you hearing what amounts to babble, or has it always been completely comprehensible to you when they've attempted communication?
Well, it hasn't been necessarily completely comprehensible, but I've never heard speech in a language I didn't understand. I've heard very little speech, very little, just a few words, and I have heard cries, 3 cries once that remain the most emotionally rich sounds I've ever heard in my life. They were astonishing, beautiful, heartrending cries. And but most of my communication with the visitors, once I began to be able to communicate with them, which was about 2 or 3 years, I guess, after it started, was in pictures. And I got quite good at that. For a while, for a long time, I didn't realize that there was communication going on. And then later, I realized that I could, in my mind, ask a question in words and get the answer in a picture. And that worked very well for a long time.
Very short on time. Larry in Fort Lauderdale, you're on with Whitley.
Hi, good evening, Art and Whitney. From a techie point of view, it seems as though the visitors, the abductors, are vacillating between being extremely secretive and yet leaving a transmit device in somebody. And I've often wondered about this. We're in an age, like the caller said at the bottom of the hour, of video cameras, wireless video cameras on all four corners of people's houses, motion detectors, pressure pads that are in lawns underneath windows, window screen wires, and a host of cameras that sometimes aren't on the abductee's house but on the neighbor's house. And yet we don't have the smoking gun of a landing craft with four prongs coming off the bottom of it. It does seem to be an anomaly that they would leave something inside you that scientists cannot figure out what it is, and yet they were able to vaporize people and perhaps bring them through the door we were talking about earlier. Because with all of our technology and with the proliferation of cameras and all of these alarm devices that are all over the place now, we don't seem to have a smoking gun.
Well, it's interesting that we don't. When I lived in this house in upstate New York, I was absolutely surrounded by alarm systems. And I had, for example, a bank of switches beside the bed where I could flip these 6 switches and turn on huge lights all around the house. And I had cameras. We even had talcum powder. We used to try to put talcum powder on the floor, and that once worked. And unfortunately, what happened was I found some footprints, sort of scuffed footprints, and what appeared to be the sweepings of what must have been a tail.
A nice low-tech solution, huh?
Right. Well, the problem with it is that I've probably got pictures somewhere in some file that we took of this, but who would, there wasn't proof of anything. I could have easily made it myself.
Sure.
So now, when we had cameras up, there was an effort made to avoid the cameras, and I think though that whatever's going on here, and this caller makes an excellent point, that there is a fascinatingly strange contradiction between the physicality of the implants and the unquestionable presence of these objects in people's bodies.
All right. Well, I'm sorry, I've got to cut you off.
Okay.
I know that you're going to be in the chat room on unknowncountry.com, 10 o'clock Saturday, is it?
10 o'clock Saturday morning, yes, in the subscriber section.
Another great program, Whitley. Thank you so very much, and take care, my friend.
Thank you, Art.
Good night. All right, folks, that's it. Tomorrow night, Dr. Gary C. Ridnour, Pandemic, one you don't want to miss. It'll be scary. Good night.